Hi, my name is Jenny Rosengren, and I am so excited to be doing this webinar. I have been wanting to give a live webinar for so long on this topic because I'm so passionate about it. But the truth is I am a mom to 9 children. And just trying to think of a time when I would truly be uninterrupted was like non-existent. And so I am recording this webinar and it's at 1 o'clock in the morning when my children are all asleep. And so without further ado, this webinar is brought to you by Rosengren Counseling and Consulting. And I am going to go ahead and share my screen now and talk about the often unknown aspects of trauma healing. This is an introduction to what my husband and I call body-based mindfulness. Mindfulness is kind of the new thing up here in our brain, but we really want to talk about the body and this aspect of healing because I think it's a really overlooked aspect, and for me it was the missing link. So my healing started to take place back with I had been diagnosed with leaky gut syndrome, and I had some serious rage issues. And my first healing, let me get to the next slide here, was I started with herbs first. I needed to heal my my gut, my physical body, and then I realized that I started to have some mental clarity. And so the first thing that I started with was herbs. And then I have a website called Crazy Herb Girl. That's where it started. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of stuff about herbs on there, but that's on the to-do list. And I've also studied homeopathy, which I absolutely love. Holistic iridology, fascinating. I've studied many different types of energy healing, and then body-based mindfulness is what my husband and I have we're creating this holistic, truly body, emotional, physical healing that we just absolutely love. Most of what I have learned concerning trauma itself has been gleaned from my brilliant husband, Kent, not because he's traumatic, but because he knows so much about it. He's a clinical psychologist with extensive training in trauma, and he is currently starting a private practice where he really wants to be focusing on education and giving people the tools to be able to heal on their own as much as possible. And our hope is that it just creates this beautiful domino effect to be able to empower people to help heal themselves, and then in turn that they can help share these tools with others that they can heal. We just want to bring some joy to the earth. There's enough dark heaviness out there that we want to change and shift that. So he has also, just to let you know, he has worked over 10 years with he's worked with active duty military going and coming from Iraq and Afghanistan. He's worked at the VA hospital with veterans and with other illnesses like anxiety and depression, but a lot of his work has been with PTSD and with trauma. I am the developer of My Perfection Healing. It's a Christian faith-based energy healing method that teaches that energy really is tangible, and our thoughts and intention are so much more powerful than we even realize. Today, I will not be delving into the Christian faith-based information so much. This is kind of a mindset for everybody's beliefs, no judgment here. I, along with others, have compiled and categorized the book, 1,000 Categorized Positive and Negative Beliefs. It is such a powerful tool to be able to really get into what are the core negative beliefs that are causing the imbalances, causing the blocks. And I love the positive beliefs to replace the negatives. We in our Western civilization kind of have this view that if we remove the bad, then the good will come in. And that's not necessarily true. And I want to be really intentional when I'm working with a client that when we remove that negativity and there's that void, we want to make sure to fill it with something that's positive and true to really empower the individual. If you want to know more about this book, you can visit my website. It's myperfectionhealing.org, or it is also found on Amazon. If you really want to make my day, you can leave me a comment on there and share with me how this book has helped you, because I love empowering people to heal. I love helping them work through their trauma. And I just, it's so rewarding. And some people are like, how can you work with people, you know, in these hard, difficult situations? It's because it feeds me to be able to help them feel like they can heal. There is hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel. So without further ado, let's jump into trauma. So what is trauma? Trauma is something that hasn't been finished, whether it's with a capital T, really severe trauma, or a lowercase t. Trauma it includes our physiological responses in that event, and they haven't been allowed to complete. So maybe we didn't get to flee. Maybe we didn't get to say the things that we wanted to. Maybe we wanted to fight, but we were too little and we couldn't punch and kick it hard enough. And so these are events or situations from the event that haven't been able to finish. And this affects how our nervous system, our central nervous system works and how it's regulated. So when a traumatic experience occurs, the brain has recorded everything from what we're seeing, the sounds that we hear, the smells, the taste in our mouth, the physical sensations, the emotions, and the beliefs that are taken on during that experience, even the movements of our body. So for example, maybe someone falls down the stairs and their body moves in a specific way. If there is another time where the body moves in that similar way, the nervous system can react to that and view it as incredibly dangerous. So in fact, I was just at a fair the other day, and a woman said, she's an acupuncturist, and she said, I work on people that have been in car accidents, and I help them balance their body and the pain goes away. And as soon as they get in their car, their body goes crazy again. Well, this is why. This is because the body remembers, and it ties that pain, that nervous system gets triggered as soon as they're by their car. So this method, these tools help to discharge that energy that is trapped and has not been able to be finished. It's so powerful. I love it. So trauma carries with it energy that if it isn't discharged, then it requires our energy to suppress it. So I like to talk about our nervous system like it's a spring. So this spring ebbs and flows. We get stressed out and it calms down. We get stressed and it calms down. And so that's our nervous system. Our sympathetic nervous system comes up, our parasympathetic nervous system comes down, helps it calm down. What happens when we have trauma is we don't get to have that finish, and it's like this spring all of a sudden needs to be held tightly. And pressure is building up because the energy wants to be released, but our fear is, if I let this spring go now, it's going to fly apart and my life's going to come, it's all going to come down. And so we have people that say things like, I'm coming apart at the seams, I just can't keep it together much longer. That is really indicative that they are holding their spring from some, even if they're just lots of little T traumas, they're holding it together, and all of their energy is taken doing that. And so even just functioning doing normal things now can be impossible, because so much of their energy is taken holding the spring together. So you'll have, like, for example, someone gets in a car accident and they're like, it's never been the same. I've just never been able to handle life. There's just so much stress now since this accident. Well, that's most likely because they're holding onto this trauma energy and not allowing that ebb and flow. So this particular method works with the nervous system. We're not about re-traumatizing people. We're not about exposure therapy, where we're going to throw you into the deep end of the pool and say, we're just going to keep throwing you in until you get used to the trauma. That's not, we don't want to re-traumatize the nervous system. We don't want the nervous system to shut down for people to go numb and on autopilot. So let's jump into this. There are 3 brains. There's the survival reptilian brain, and this brain is just focused on keeping you alive. So fight or flight responses, or freeze if necessary. Sometimes it's a freeze response instead of a fight or flight. And then that also traps energy, because let's say a small child it can't defend itself, and it can't talk back, and it can't run away. And so that small child freezes. And so there is a response, but it also knows that the response it wanted to do wasn't safe. Then we're jumping in. So each one, the next is the mammalian brain, which is emotions, and then the human brain, which is the frontal cortex. So here it's our higher functioning brain where we make a lot of our executive decisions. Understanding that these 3 brains all speak a different language. They do communicate, but not as well as we'd like, especially when we're in a fight or flight situation. So in a fight or flight, that language, that survival reptilian brain language, is sensation and movement. So when I talk about sensation, I'm talking about what your body actually feels like inside. For example, maybe we don't want to cry. And so all of a sudden, this sensation is that our throat gets really, really thick and it's really hard to swallow. That's a sensation. A sensation could also be feeling really pumped up for a sporting event and feeling that rush in your chest. Maybe, more shallow breathing because we're excited, or our heart pumping. We can feel it. Those are sensations. And that is what our survival reptilian brain speaks. The mammalian language are emotions. So the emotions come after the sensations. And I'll talk a little bit more in a little bit about that. And then the last is the human frontal cortex language, and it is words, thoughts, and beliefs. So I really want to distinguish here that most people, and I'm going to use an example of someone maybe that has anxiety. They're sitting in a meeting and they start to feel like, I got to get out of here. They have a flee response. And they start thinking, what is wrong with me? There's nothing dangerous here. Why am I doing? I need to stay in this meeting. I can't just get up and run out. And they suppress and try to control their physiological response with words, thoughts, and beliefs. What language does our nervous system speak? Sensation. And so the 2 aren't communicating, and the body is being betrayed by our higher thinking brain. And it's actually re-traumatizing and adding more trauma energy to the situation by not allowing our body to do what it wants to do, which is flee. So in this situation, I would coach the person, if possible, if it's not a dangerous situation, allow yourself, you don't have to run out, but allow yourself to take your body out, because that's what it wants. That's what it needs to feel safe, and allow the body to calm down. And then most likely you can return to the meeting. But most people don't do that. They sit there and suppress and betray their physical bodies. So we want to start honoring our body and listening to what it needs and what it's communicating to us, instead of becoming further and further disconnected from our physical bodies. All right, so SEMBI, there are 5 different things, 5 elements that are crucial in addressing trauma that has affected not only one's outlook on life, but the actual physiological responses that are governed by their nervous system. So their sensations, emotions, movements, beliefs, and images. And trauma occurs because some or all of these categories have issues that haven't been finished or resolved. And really, we can't overstate the importance of going in and addressing each of these, making sure that there are no triggers left. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is sensations. So this could include tingling, heat, rapid pulse, pressure, like a weight on someone's chest, feeling sick to your stomach, so nausea, a tightening of muscles, like up in your shoulders and feeling that stress. Excuse me. Oh, the 1 o'clock in the morning must be getting to me. Sluggish mind or slow reactions, numbness, or autopilot. So I'm going to show you this next slide, and I want you to really focus when you see this image. Where do you feel it? Where is the reaction in your body? Ooh. Some people actually have a movement instead of a sensation. I taught this last night, and a woman had the sensation in her throat. So I just want you to notice that, and hopefully it hasn't triggered you too much. But I really wanted people to understand the distinguishing nature of sensations versus emotions, because a lot of times I work with clients and I'll say, what do you feel? And they start telling me, well, I feel stressed out, and I have to stop. No. What do you feel inside your body? And then staying with that, because a lot of people want to move back up into their head and they want to analyze what they're feeling. Well, I think I'm feeling this because, and it's like, no. Let's stay with your body and track those sensations. Okay, so why do I have this adorable picture of this adorable little boy? Because he's mine. He is my 4-year-old son. And I wanted to give a personal example of allowing sensations to crest. So this is energy. It travels in waves. And what happens is we have energy come and it eventually crests and will come back down. And that's important to allow it to do it. But what happens for most people is they realize they're feeling this sensation. It's really uncomfortable. They don't like it, and they suppress it. And so it's not allowed to make that crest and then calm down. So this is my sweet little 4-year-old boy. When he was 3, this is back in June of 2016, he had some difficulty breathing. And my husband and I finally decided that we needed to take him to the ER because the medication, the nebulizer treatments, were not being effective in helping him, and it was getting pretty scary. And so we took him in, and we're moved into the ER. And then as soon as we got in there, they said, we need to move him to trauma. And I just feel this gut shock. And I have known about these tools for several years, and this is the first in real-time traumatic event that I was able to feel the sensations and not suppress them. And so I felt this gut shock, and I allowed it to stay instead of having the response, oh no, this can't be happening. Oh no, what, and just letting that fear run wild. I didn't let myself go up into my mind. I didn't let my mind shut down. I just felt the sensations. And when you do not fight feeling them, they literally only last seconds and they leave on their own. They dissipate. And so I was able to do that. Within the next little while, they had decided that he was too severe to be able to stay within this local hospital, and that he would need to be life flighted. And they wanted to life flight him to Denver. And again, that gut shock of like, oh man, this is really serious. This is not, we're not playing around here with his breathing. And I allowed that gut shock to pass through me again. And what happens when your body goes into shock is we want to suppress that shock. We don't want to feel the sensations that are associated with it. And it literally takes our frontal cortex offline. Our higher functioning brain shuts down, and our body is just focusing on surviving. And so we literally become stupider. Yes, I did say that. We become stupider when we move into fight or flight, and we become purely instinctual. And I didn't want to have that happen. I wanted to have my higher functioning brain, and I knew it was important to acknowledge and honor the sensations that were coming in my experience. And so I did that. And it allowed me to have clarity in the situation and make wise decisions. And so I realized, you know what, we don't know anyone in Denver, and it would be so much nicer if we could actually be transferred to Salt Lake City, because we have family that lives there, and I have a lot of not only relatives but friends should we need anything. And so I asked, is it a possibility that he be transferred? And they said, yeah, actually that would be okay. And so we were life flighted to Salt Lake City to Primary Children's Hospital. And I, for a fact, know that if I had been shut down and scared, that would not have even have crossed my mind. And it ended up being just a huge blessing to be able to be a shorter distance away from home and closer to family and relatives during this trying time. And so this next picture is when he's actually being loaded onto the airplane. And I have to say, what incredible staff that was. It was a huge blessing to be able to have those people help care for my son in such a scary time. It really, it's really amazing to be in a place of gratitude. And when, I mean, I still had fear, obviously, but I think instead of being so shut down and in shock, I was able to feel gratitude and peace during a time that was very scary. And then here's the picture. I had to put in a happy one at the end. He's the crazy one there with his tongue out, and all of the siblings and my husband coming to pick us up. And we're missing our number 9. He was in my tummy at the time, and he is now 6.5 months old. So my family, I love them so much. All right, so now moving on to emotions. I'm not going to talk a ton about emotions, but what I want to differentiate here is that emotions are a secondary response to those sensations. Those sensations happen first in our bodies, and then they're translated to our brains and interpreted into an emotion. So what's fascinating about this is that you can have the same sensation, but it can be translated into 2 different, or possibly even more emotions. And so that's why it's important to distinguish truly between emotions and sensations. So for example, you hear something really awful, and it may kind of turn your stomach. You have that feeling in your stomach, um, and it could be sadness, it could be grief, it could be kind of a horror, whatever emotion is tied to that sensation for you. Or you could be riding a roller coaster and have that same kind of flip-flop stomach feeling, but you love roller coasters, and so it's interpreted as a fun sensation, and it's not dangerous. So sensations are purely based upon the person's perception of what is happening at the time when that sensation occurs. So overwhelming sensations and emotions can become trapped in the body's organs and tissues, and they can actually cause physical imbalances and pain when they're not allowed to be processed through. So again, now I don't actually do a lot of processing emotions, because the sensations precede them. And when you process through the energy of the sensation, it also releases the emotional energy. Now, movements. These are fascinating. They become trapped when fight or flight commands are not followed. And generally, this happens because of social reasons. It's not okay to just haul out and punch somebody. It's not okay to just get up and run out of a room or shout obscenities. So your vocal cords, they actually fall under the governing of movements, because your vocal cords move. It's not okay to say just really hurtful or vulnerable things. So movements can range from hitting, kicking, speaking, yelling, screaming, running, spinning, curling into the fetal position, just collapsing, falling to the ground, pushing or pulling. It's interesting to note that depending upon the situation, a person may need resistance. So say a person gets trapped somewhere and they're not able to move or to push off something. Like, I'm trapped under a car. They can have the movement to push that car off of them, but just doing this movement with no resistance is not going to allow their body to release something, because they had resistance at the time. And so having a person or something that they're able to push against to have that resistance allows that movement to be released from the body. So if you think about it, the brain has sent the command to push, but the body either physically isn't able to do it, or if it was punching, the frontal cortex said, not a good decision, don't punch your boss. You get my drift. So we're recreating the situation, but we're not doing it in a really fast manner, because that may not completely release it from the nervous system. So we want to do movements in a very slow way, where we allow the body to lead instead of what we think the body wanted to do. We actually give permission to the body to finish it. Another reason that movements are not finished, maybe because there just isn't the time. And a perfect example of that is a car accident. So I'm going to talk about a car accident that I actually had. I was driving, I was 4.5 months pregnant with the same son, my same cute little 4-year-old boy. And the car pulled in front of us, couldn't make the turn, realized they didn't have enough time, and they just stopped. And so we T-boned right into them. And immediately I knew that my body had wanted to keep pressing the brake. And so I just allowed my leg and my foot to continue pushing and pushing and pushing until I felt like my body no longer wanted to do that anymore. It had worked out what it needed to do. The other was holding the steering wheel. I could see it coming, and I did not want my belly to hit the steering wheel. And so I had a lot of just really holding firm in my arms. The problem is that I still continued to have really severe back pain, to the point that I could only stand for maybe 15 or 20 minutes. I couldn't wash dishes and do the normal things that I needed to around the house. And it was really debilitating. And I had been seeing a craniosacral therapist that was helping manage it, but it still wasn't taken away. Well, one day I was on the table while she was working on me, and kind of in my mind's eye, I saw that my body wanted to turn to the right. And I didn't know what it wanted to do, but I had just learned these tools. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to let my body lead. I'm just going to let it do what it wants to do. And as I did, my whole body turned to the right, and it curled into the fetal position. And I realized that's what my body wanted to do. It wanted to protect me. It wanted to protect my baby, but it didn't have the time to do that. And never in my mind would I have thought, oh, that's what my body needs to do. It was simply allowing my body to make the movements, and I followed it. When I rolled back over, I had a huge pop in my left hip. That energy was released. I got it from the table, and my back didn't hurt. At this time, I was about 8.5 months pregnant. So within 2 weeks, I had my baby, and the pain returned. And so I thought, I wonder if I just let my body do what it needs to do again. And again, I wanted to move into that position. And I realized that by the time I was 8.5 months pregnant, I couldn't get into as small of a position, of a fetal position, as my body would have wanted to at the time. But it's like my body gave me reprieve for that amount of time until it knew it could get back into that position, into the smaller, tighter ball that I needed to. And to this day, I have not had any more back pain, and count myself lucky that I was able to learn these tools and not have lasting damage from the car accident. Beliefs. We use these to bring order and safety to our world, and it's an effort to make sense of really chaotic circumstances a lot of the time, but often these beliefs are untrue, and they limit us in our progression. So finding and eliminating these false assumptions can be frightening sometimes, because it can really be a perception shift. But removing them just allows us so much growth, and allows us a new reality, more hope, less pain, less suffering, and just a more enjoyable life. So I have found that the negative and the false beliefs are really a perfect vehicle to be able to get to these underlying sensations. It usually brings them up. So having my client verbally acknowledge the false beliefs then allows these sensations to come up in movements, and they can work through them in a safe way. And is really incredible to me is that I mean, we don't even stay with the beliefs, we stay with the body and let the body process what it needs to. And it's literally like once that energy leaves, the belief goes with it. And then the person has this clarity of the situation. They see the trauma in a different light that they've never been able to see it before, because they are no longer in this trauma energy and space. They're free from that energy. It's really powerful. This next slide, this is so important. I really can't say how important this is, of not judging the sensations and movements. If we can start to do this in the moment and just actually be present, we don't trap these things. But what does trap them most of the time is that people have cultural, moral, or religious beliefs that say, I shouldn't feel this, so they suppress it, or I should feel this way, which stops what's happening from actually processing, and they stop this energy. It's like, here it comes, it's cresting, and they say, nope, it's not okay for me to feel that. And so instead of allowing that energy to crest and leave, they're actually trapping it within themselves. And not only that's so detrimental, is then they feel perhaps it's anger, and their religion says we should forgive, and so they don't allow themselves to feel the anger, which then in turn doesn't allow them to forgive, which then brings guilt and shame. And why can't I let go of this? What's wrong with me? I want to forgive. And it gets all tied in together and then becomes an even bigger mess. So understanding that this life is about experiencing and not fighting it, not resisting it. Like I said, it will not persist. But if we resist it, it will persist inside of us. And eventually, if we just do more and more gathering, then our spring is just going to get harder and harder to contain until we are explosive. And I think sometimes that allows steam to blow off, just like a pressure cooker. This energy is building and building, and there's got to be some kind of release valve. And so that can happen, and then we feel better, but eventually that is just going to build back up again. So let's stop that cycle. If we can stop judging and condemning ourselves, we can move through the energy. And if we can feel the anger and let it go, then we can move into forgiveness energy and move on and progress. Okay, so the last one is images. And these images I'm talking about are sensory. So they carry emotions and sensations with them when they're brought to remembrance. So if you remember something and you see something and it triggers something in your body, that's a trapped image. And it's telling you this is a trigger, this still needs to be healed. What's really incredible is, as I have done this, there were things like my son's picture of when he was in the hospital and he had the mask and everything on, and IVs and everything. It doesn't trigger me. It makes me go, oh, that was a rough time. But I do not get a physical reaction like feeling sick to my stomach, or like, oh, I can't even look at that. It's so triggering. It was an experience in my life, and I grew from it, and so has he. And that's the beauty of allowing these sensations to process and leave, is it doesn't have to stay within me anymore. So those types of images, if you have a smell that triggers you, could be a sound, could be a taste, or even tactile images, meaning with the way something feels with your hands or your skin. these images have negative physical, if they have negative physical sensations attached to them, they need to be finished as well. So I want to give example of how this could play out in real life. Say this little boy, he's just enjoying life. He's eating his little ice cream cone, and then all of a sudden falls and breaks his arm. And it's really painful and really traumatic for him. The next time he eats ice cream, because when he fell, he still had the ice cream flavor within his mouth, that could become a trigger for him unknowingly, because our brain remembers everything, but we may not consciously make the connections. And so the next time that he eats dairy, it triggers his body to go, oh, this is unsafe. And he feels sick to his stomach. And that happens enough. If he has another instance in life, maybe that's tied to another painful experience that is triggered with dairy or ice cream, his body could start to develop an allergy to that, because it's an immune response that says you need to protect yourself. And so recognizing these patterns as they start and tying these things together can be really powerful. All right, so that's SIMBI, those 5 different things. And we're going to go ahead and talk about how I move through the healing with my clients. I call it the art of healing. So acknowledge, accept, release, and transform. These are the fundamental steps that must be followed in order to finalize the healing process. And the first is we have to just even acknowledge that there's a problem. So for example, going back to the person who's angry and they really, really want to forgive, but they've never acknowledged to themselves, I was extremely hurt by this event. And so what they resist continues to persist. And so we just have to acknowledge what is. I'm angry. And just that's it. And then the acceptance is when I'm including the actual processing of the sensation or movements that are within the body that have been trapped and not allowed to finish. It's allowing ourselves to be with what is. So generally, people express, they can talk and talk and talk about how they're angry, but they don't actually feel the sensations that are associated with anger, because those can be really hard to tolerate. And so we're either expressing or we're suppressing and not feeling it at all. This can be really uncomfortable and overwhelming for people, especially when it's a really traumatic event. But acceptance is vital. We have to accept and move through that. And it allows the trauma energy to be felt and then for it to release. So a lot of people talk about, intentionally letting something go. If you really understand and allow these things to be within you, they crest and they leave. So I've worked with some clients who it just crests one time and they allow it to be there and it moves out on its own. I have other clients who have some more severe issues and it may crest several times, but each time it lessens and lessens in intensity until eventually it just kind of goes away. And so really understanding that you don't have to let go or intentionally release, you just have to allow it to be, instead of trying to analyze it, instead of trying to suppress it and whatnot. And then we get to transform, and it is allowed to occur. We transform as we allow these things to be released and these responses to finish, and we have hope and we have clarity on the situation and we're ready to move forward. I want to talk about the way that we can process gently through really traumatic events. And to be honest, we don't even necessarily have to go back to a traumatic event to heal it, because when we are working on allowing these sensations to be, we're taking the nervous system, we're taking that spring, and we're just allowing it to move very, very lightly as we can tolerate. So titration is the IV drip bag. And the person, the individual, can decide how quickly or slowly they want that energy to be coming. So if they want to just dive in the deep end, they're a person that can tolerate, really overwhelming stuff, then they can do big movements. Or we slow it down and just do drip, drip, as the person can handle it. So one of the techniques, say maybe someone has a really whole body response to trauma, we would just focus on one aspect, like maybe just their throat, or maybe it's just their thumb, really depending on the person and how much their body and their nervous system can tolerate, because we do not want to overwhelm the system. Or we can, say they're feeling what's going on inside their chest, they're feeling that, and then it becomes, they can start to tell, oh, I'm losing control of this. They can move to their pinky finger, and there's absolutely no charge there, and they feel safe. And so they can create this wave of moving back and forth between a safe place and experiencing and allowing that sensation to play out until it can get to a point where it leaves on its own. So it's a really beautiful process that, even if, like I said, we don't necessarily have to go back to the trauma, we can just process similar things right here in the now. So if our issue is anger, and the person coming to the next session is they had road rage on the way, then we process the road rage. And it teaches the body that this rage, this anger is allowable. It's tolerable, and it can be there. And just allowing, we are retraining the nervous system to allow this to happen. So this past anger can come up, this sensation, and process through, and we don't even necessarily have to know what that trauma was. We just allow the energy. So my husband teaches an in-depth course, an 8-week course in this, learning these tools. And he said one class, he just said, I don't want you to even talk about it. You don't have to tell me anything about the traumatic event. We're just going to deal with the sensations and stay with the body throughout the whole process. And it can be done. We do not have to talk necessarily about the trauma to be able to process through it. Okay, this is a real exercise that I use. You can do this verbally, or a lot of people like to write. And in this process, while you're writing, we're focusing on what sensations and movements do these things bring up. So at this moment, I acknowledge, accept, and release my fear of, and it can be my fear of losing control, my fear of deep water, whatever that might be. What happens when I acknowledge this and then start to accept what that is, what's going on within the body? And then these condemnations and judgment against myself, others, and life situations, what kind of ramifications does it have? What are you judging about yourself because you're afraid to go in the deep end of the pool, or you have anger at your mother? Write those down, acknowledge those, accept them, and then process through the sensations or movements that come from that. And then what are the temptations? I just want to crawl into a hole. I don't want to deal with life. I want to quit. I want to hide under the covers. What are your temptations? I want to eat a ton of chocolate. And what does that feel like inside your body when you admit to yourself, I don't want to deal with this, or I want to go eat a bunch of chocolate? What sensations are there that can be processed through? And then again, really concentrating on the positive. Once we allow this negative energy to process through and leave on its own, we focus on what positive things are we going to put back into myself to raise my frequency. I choose to allow myself to transform and become whole and accept all the goodness, forgiveness, and love that aids me in fulfilling my higher purpose. My new response is, write that out and feel what that feels like in your body. Feel that really take root. The new words of hope and enlightenment from God, source, or the universe are, and just sit and listen and have those words come to your mind, because they're there. and then I'm grateful and I rejoice in. Those are super high frequency words to have gratitude and to rejoice. We want to bring that energy into ourselves. That's what's going to bring us healing and grounded and be able to help others. So this is a really great exercise to just practice. If you feel like, going into the sensations a little more difficult, doing it this way can be kind of a gentle way to enter into it, especially if you like writing. All right, so SEMBI, the 5 different things that we need to look at with trauma: sensations, emotions, movements, beliefs, and images, and the art of healing. And that concludes the webinar. And I want to, within the next few days, maybe even the beginning of next week, I want to be able to hold a Q&A session so that any questions that you had during this webinar, you are able to ask. And I want to have my husband with me because he's really the expert on this kind of stuff. So my suggestion is, if you want to be part of that Q&A, please join. I have a Facebook group called 1000 Positive and Negative Beliefs. And if you will join that group, we will hold the Q&A in that group and give you more information, because he's going to be starting a class next week where you will be able to go in depth with this if you are interested. It's going to be an online class. It's going to take place for 8 weeks. And the class size, we are limiting it to 8 people. The reason why is we want to keep it intimate so that the participants can feel safe in the environment, and also that each person, if they so choose, can have one class session devoted to them, so that they're able to work one-on-one while the others are processing themselves, but they get to be the focus. In that Q&A that we will do, he will also give more information on what will that class actually look like, kind of a syllabus of sorts. And we're offering, if you just want to jump into this right now and you're like, yes, this class is for me, we're offering that if you sign up within the next 2 days, that you can use the code EARLY. So capital EARLY, EARLY, to sign up for the class. It'll give you $25 off, a $25 discount, to make the class $374. And to sign up for the class, if you're interested in learning more, I will put a link in the bottom of this video on YouTube that you can go to that link and click through. I'm assuming that this class is actually going to fill up pretty quickly. If that is the case, I will put up a waiting list. I also suggest getting on our newsletter. So there's a newsletter, I can't remember, somewhere on my website, there's a newsletter that you can sign up for. So at myperfectionhealing.org. Or you could even, in that 1000 beliefs group, you can say, hey, add me to your newsletter. But if you get on the newsletter, we will announce new classes, and I also will announce new classes within that group. So if this class fills up really quickly, we will do another class, because we want to run them concurrently so that they have the 8-week course, and he's got all the 8-week courses running at the same time. He's doing one here locally in Grand Junction where we live. So if you're from Grand Junction and want to take part in that, that's a possibility. But make sure when you sign up for the class, if you don't live in Grand Junction, you sign up for the online class and not for the Grand Junction one. And so I think that's everything. So just make sure to sign up in the Facebook group, 1000 Positive and Negative Beliefs, and it's 1000, the actual number. I didn't write it out in words. And that way you can stay up to date on future webinars, future classes. If you want to sign up right now, like I said, for the next 2 days, you'll save $25 if you sign up. The class is limited to 8 people. And if it fills up, we will announce a new class. So stay within those groups, or sign up for the newsletter so that you can stay up to date on that. And we will have more classes. Oh, and the last thing, this webinar, we're only keeping it up for 1 week. So starting tomorrow, well, actually it was Thursday when I started to tape this, but once he starts his class on Thursday next week, this will be taken down, and then we will resubmit it for viewing in probably another 2 to 3 months when he'll start another round of classes. So make sure you sign up or stay in touch with us for future classes. He will be doing more advanced classes in the future that have to deal with how do we use body-based mindfulness for anxiety? How do we use it for depression? How do we use it for chronic pain? And so there will be classes specific, for sexual abuse, for these specific areas, and more advanced help specific to that type of trauma. And so we're super excited. I hope that you've enjoyed this, and we'll see you later.